what motivates me, I was thinking about this when I have a few things, but the one that kind of got to me is I like a little bit of pressure. And it's actually kind of similar to what Eliana had to say there with like when time is tight and I have to get going to motivate. I kind of like that a little bit myself. I put a little bit of pressure on me, like I have to get this done now. And then it's getting it done and those results like many of you shared. You know, if I think I got to get all these meals cooked, okay, I'm going to go do it. And I put that pressure on myself. My wife's laughing at me because she's like, yeah, you make everybody's breakfast every morning. Yeah, I got to get it done by a certain time so I can get Jeremiah to the bus stop and then start my day. Yeah, it's exactly what it is, right? It's putting a little pressure on, but that gets me going, all right? Now, that stuff is kind of what gets us to do things. That's that motivation, what gets us to do things. We're going to talk about motivation actually for the next 3 weeks in a slightly different way. We're going to talk about motivation more as the why or the reason behind it, not what gets us going, but the motivation as to why we do something. We're going to hear Jesus give 3 weeks, kind of almost a little mini series within this bigger series. I'm going to call it What's Your Motivation, just for fun. The next 3 weeks, Jesus is going to talk about our motivation behind 3 different acts of living a righteous life or living rightly by how Jesus wants us to live. And those will be giving to the needy, prayer, and fasting. So the next 3 weeks, those are 3 things we're going to talk about. And each week, he will talk about the action itself, what we're actually doing. He'll give a little bit of a caution. Jesus is good about that. He kind of cautions us on something. And then give his actual teaching about what we're going to do. And today is giving to the needy. So that's going to be our action today that we're going to hear from Jesus about. And what I think we really need to take away from this today and what we're going to look at is that we should give like nobody's around. All right, that's going to be kind of our focal point. Give like nobody's around. So let's look at the passage. Let's figure out what it's saying. We're going to be in Matthew 6, so we just turned the corner into Matthew 6. We finished 5. We did it. First chapter of the Sermon on the Mount is done. We are into 6. We're going to look at 6, 1 through 4 today. It will be right up here as always, behind me on the screen. Bibles on your tables, or if you're following along, as always, in the New International Version. All right, let's read it. 6, 1 through 4, and then we will dive in. Verse 1, be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. Let me stop quickly. That is kind of our intro to this mini-series. That's really the takeaway verse for the next 3 weeks. So don't practice your righteousness or your right living to be seen by others. All right, then verse 2 is going to get us into what we're going to talk about today. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honored by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. All right, part 1. So he talks about the action first, as we said. Giving to the needy. This is that first part of verse 2. And he says, when you give to the needy, this is important because it is a when, not an if. All right? To give like nobody's around, we actually have to give. And this is an assumed act. Something that's going to be an assumed part of your life as a follower of Jesus is that we give to the needy. Now, it was known in the biblical times as almsgiving. You would give your alms, which is helping those in need. And looking at it, it was actually super well organized back in the day, especially Old Testament. There were, I'm going to highlight 3 different acts of giving to the needy that were set up, and they were really good. There was gleaning, which has to do with your crops. So when you harvested your crop, you were told and taught to not go all the way to the edges of your crops to harvest and to not go back over it a second time and pick up everything you missed, because the poor people were then allowed to go into your crops and they could go at the edges or pick up what was left. That was called gleaning. If you've ever read the book of Ruth, Ruth meets her husband Boaz as she's gleaning in his fields, right? This happens. So this is a cool thing. Like, you don't go to the edges or go over it a second time. Those in need can come and just take, and this is an accepted practice. Then with the harvest, the 7th year of the harvest, you don't plan to use your land. You don't plan for it. You don't use it. Because then, again, the poor people can come in and get food from your crops. Same thing with the vineyards and the olive groves. So that 7th year of the harvest, you didn't use it, you didn't set for it. Again, accepted practice. The poor were just allowed to come in and get what they needed. And then finally, a big one, I'm going to guess one that some of us wish still existed a little more today, is the canceling of debts. right? Money that is owed. This was a thing. In the 7th year, debts were canceled. Now, among fellow Israelites, right? That was kind of the key here. So, fellow Israelites, if you owed money, you paid it off, but then for the 7th year, it was canceled. And in Deuteronomy 15:4, it says, because there need be no poor people among you. God didn't want there to be poor people. So he puts the teaching out there is that we're going to help the needy. You're going to do these things. They are all outlined ways of giving for the Israelites. Now, today we have many different options. And they're not, maybe not quite as structured as they were for the Israelites, but we have different ways we can give to the needy. There are food banks and shelters you can give through churches and organizations. All right? There are still those options out there, but the big thing is that it's a when. Again, it's an assumed behavior. All right? Now, we should give with a cheerful heart, with a desire to give, but the point is being a part of God's family includes giving to those in need. Think about your families. Being a part of your family, are there any behaviors or actions that are just assumed because of your family, because of what you are? We have a few at the Woodhouse, and the one I'm going to highlight, the assumed behavior, is you will take family pictures. This is a deal. I have a slide up here. Yeah, here's a collage of some of our family pictures, and there are more, coming. All right, we will take family pictures. I may gripe about it, the kids may gripe about it, but mom wants family pictures, so we are going to take them. Now, we've come up with a structure similar, how the Israelites had their ways of doing their giving. We kind of do this. We use, with the cell phone, these are all cell phone pictures, we use the reverse camera so the kids can see themselves. I have a Bluetooth clicker for the shutter, and we let Jeremiah take some of them. And we do stupid dinosaur poses sometimes. I say, okay, now serious ones. And now smiling, and now Dad takes them. And now Jeremiah can take them. And it works. It doesn't matter necessarily how we go about it, but part of it is, as part of the Wood family, you're going to take family pictures. All right? There is kind of no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So we do it. And I'm going to be honest, our kids probably handle better than I do sometimes.
You forgot the fruit snack bribes?
We didn't need to talk about that. Yeah, usually there's some sort of incentive. Let's use the word incentive for our children to take good pictures. Fruit snacks work wonders. So does pudding. But anyway. But the point is, it's an assumed behavior. Being a part of our family, we take pictures. Same thing with giving to those in need. God tells us we're going to do it. It's a way of serving God. It's a way of serving the needy. He doesn't want poor people among us. So he says, give to those in need. All right, so we're going to do it. All right, we know that. First part, we're going to do this. Now Jesus cautions us. So let's look at the caution. That's the rest of verse 2 where he goes on this thing. Don't announce it with trumpets like the hypocrites in the streets do. Now, there is no biblical example that anybody rolled up into the streets to give to the needy with trumpets blaring behind them. I can't totally say it didn't happen, but we're pretty sure this is more of a metaphor, basically for not drawing attention to yourself. All right, don't make this big spectacle of going. All right, so if I'm going to go out and hand out things to anybody needy on the street, I shouldn't be blaring some sort of music from a speaker behind me and announcing my attention. That's kind of what Jesus is getting at. And he said this happened in two different kind of avenues. In the synagogue, they would come to give. This would be giving to the general fund. So it would be like if you're going to give to something through Hometown, again, you're like writing that check and playing some tunes behind you, being like, hey, everybody, here it is, that type of thing. That's what Jesus is saying, don't do that. Or when you go into the streets and give directly to somebody in need, don't make a big stink about it. Don't go expecting this giant response from whoever you're giving to or whoever sees it. Jesus says, who does that? Hypocrites. They're putting on a show. And that's actually a really good way to think about it, because hypocrite, the word, comes from what we would think of meaning like an actor, like an actual play actor. They're out there putting on a show. They're doing it for a reaction, and they're becoming someone they're not, or they don't even really want to be, because they want people to see them in a certain way. That's not so different from the actors or actresses we see in TV shows or movies today. I grew up in the era of Saved by the Bell. Anybody else? Saved by the Bell? Wow, not many. Kind of? Wow. All right. Anyway, well, we're going to make this work anyway. I grew up in Saved by the Bell. So Zach Morris, right? The popular blonde-haired, beach-looking kid. Awesome. He wanted to be Zach. Then you got Kelly Kapowski, everybody's first crush, mine included. Right? The cheerleader, awesome, pretty, everything, right? They were Zach and Kelly. Guess what? That's not their real names. They're acting. That's Mark Paul Gosselaar and Tiffany Amber Thiessen, right? They have real names. They're acting as these characters, as Zach and Kelly, but they want you to buy in to who they are. That's what made them good at acting. All right, that was the whole thing. They do it for a reaction to get you to think they are. And guess what? Here's the thing. It worked because I can see them in things now, and I see nobody but Zach and Kelly. All right, Mark Paul Gosselaar looks very different. I see him on a show now. Nope, that's Zach. Stacy and I even watched a show that Tiffany Amber Thiessen was in for like 6 seasons, and I could not see her as this character. She did a great job, but she was always Kelly because we buy in to who they are. Side note, Mark Paul Gosselaar and I share a birthday. Pretty awesome. And the Biebs. Me, Justin Bieber, Mark Paul Gosselaar. Someday maybe we'll all hang out. But I was talking about Mark, so I had to kind of say it. Anyway, they put on this show as these actors and actresses to be somebody they're not, but they want you to think they are. They did it to entertain. So what Jesus is saying is these hypocrites are acting and pretending to really care about the poor. Mostly they just care about themselves. They're doing it for a reward of acknowledgement, for validation, and for praise from others, and those rewards end. Now, if we think about it, reward, praise, validation, acknowledgement, these are not inherently bad things. But the motivation behind doing something is where the cause comes in, or the pause comes in. Think about it this way. I can give Eugene and Ryan praise and acknowledgement after church for doing an awesome job leading worship, and I should because they're fantastic. Now, if I do that, they've done nothing wrong, right? They can receive that, they can get it, and that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. What becomes a problem is if next week they get up there and they lead worship only to receive that acknowledgement and validation from me. That's the caution Jesus is putting in. It's about the motivation behind it. If they're up there just to lead us in worship and connect with God, great, no matter what anybody says to them. If they're up there for us to talk about how great they are, then that becomes the problem. That's what Jesus is getting at. And it's hard because validation and praise becomes addicting. We like it. It feels good. Similar, think about addicts, if you've ever talked to any. I remember talking to a guy that was an alcoholic at a coffee shop I worked at in college, and he told me something that was really interesting. He's like, man, I don't drink because I like what I'm drinking. I drink to get to this feeling. There's a feeling I get to, and I have to keep doing more and more and more just to get there. It's not about what I'm drinking. It's about getting to that feeling. It can become the same thing. It can become, if we give to the needy and we're only doing it to be acknowledged for it, it's no longer about the person in need. It's about us and just getting to this place. That's what Jesus is cautioning against. So it's super hard because we all want, to some degree, to be acknowledged and know we're doing well. God will give us that. But he's saying your motivation needs to be about the needy when you give. Now, thankfully, because this sounds hard to me as I was putting this together, like, wow, that's kind of tough. Jesus gives us a little bit of help in verses 3 and 4. All right? So what he says is first is to do it in secret. Again, another kind of illustration or metaphor from Jesus, because there is no prohibition or teaching against doing something in public. That's not inherently a problem. Jesus did a lot of stuff publicly. Right? Jesus was out teaching and healing and doing all sorts of things publicly. But the idea is to not draw attention to yourself and make it work as if they don't know. Make it as if the person receiving what you're giving might not even know you're there. Think about it as like a Secret Santa without the reveal, all right? Honestly, not a fan of Secret Santa, but it kind of plays. So if Ryan and I are in the same Secret Santa and I get Ryan, I should give the gift as if he's never going to know it's from me, because then it's completely about the receiver of the gift, all right? Now, yes, I know Ryan. He would probably be able to tell it's from me because I would give him something he would understand, but the idea is that he wouldn't know who it's from, and I would know that he's not going to know, so it becomes about him. It's that type of idea. That's the whole doing it in secret. Now, as we say do it in secret and nobody's seeing you, let's just kind of take the obvious here. God sees it, all right? So God is the one that's going to see it. Make God the audience of one with this, all right? God is the audience of one. So whoever you're giving to maybe doesn't even know, or act like they're not even going to know, but God is going to see it. He doesn't need anybody else to see it. The theologian John Calvin has a quote that says, "The theater of God is in the hidden corners." All right, God watches when we're hidden from anything else. God sees when we're giving with nobody else around. God can see that. That's what he wants. All right, so he's encouraging us to adopt the mindset that we're doing it for God only and that we're giving because we truly want to give. Who has heard the quote that contains the words, sing like nobody's listening, dance like no one's watching, right? Yeah. So here's what it's about. Now, I have a picture of my kids who embody this pretty well. Yeah. So sing like no one's listening. That's the two of them both singing to Lost in the Woods from Frozen 2. And I have no idea what they're dancing to, but they're striking their pose. Here's the thing. They're acting as if no one's around. Now, they probably know we're there. They don't care. But the whole point of this quote is that it's we sometimes don't sing in front of people because we're embarrassed about how we sound. We might not dance in front of somebody because we don't want them to see him dance, right? Now, I'm up here singing in front of you. You know, I've given some dance moves. I've given a Michael Jackson kick kind of move or something like that. Oh, that just pulled everything in that leg. But some don't do it because we're embarrassed. We don't want to be seen. All right, but what they're getting with this quote is who cares? Do it like nobody's around so that you do it because you want to do it. Now we have to take the other side of it. Do it like nobody's around. So maybe they won't see you as embarrassment or anything like that, but they also won't praise you or give you that acknowledgement or validation. Do it like this where it just seems like who cares? I'm doing it because I want. They're singing because they just like to sing to that song. They're dancing because they think it's awesome and it's hilarious. They're doing it because they want to. So we should give like we want to. God will see what we're doing, and he's the only one that needs to see it. All right? See a need and meet it because you just want to help meet that need for somebody and for no other reason. That's the mindset. It's okay to do things in public. I think that's fine. You know, if you're walking down State Street or down Main Street or wherever, and there's somebody in need, you can give to them, right? Even though that's in public, but it's about the motivation behind it. That's that mindset that we have to have in that heart. We have to have that internal motivation. All right, and then what Jesus says is the reward comes from God. That's kind of the final piece, is looking at the reward. And this is a part that kind of can get confusing, thinking about rewards from God. And it's come up before, and I probably should have addressed it a little earlier. But let's talk about this reward things, because it's not a reward in the sense that we look at rewards now, the sense of stuff, right? There's money or gift cards or anything like that. That's not the type of reward that I think Jesus is talking about. It's different than a normal reward. And we're all used to rewards in some way. I get, a percent back from my credit card. Rewards, they call them, right? So much for on gas or on grocery. I'm used to those rewards. My kids get rewards for things. We are in the incredible joy of potty training child number 2. All right? She gets rewarded when she actually goes on the potty with fruit snacks. Mind you, fruit snacks apparently are the key to everything in parenting, at least in our house. But she gets rewarded for that. These are rewards that we're used to, all right? But it's totally different, all right? It's more, our reward that we get from God is more about taking joy in how someone sees you. Have you ever thought about that? That like how somebody views you, somebody being pleased with you is a reward. I grew up in a church that had the same pastor my whole life that I grew up with. And we weren't a very big church, so he knew everybody. He loved the kids. There weren't a lot of younger kids. It was mostly an older congregation. And I very much remember one Wednesday night, I was sitting around the church. We did Wednesday night youth group, and the adults had prayer meeting. And then the choir, actually, church choir, rehearsed after that. And this was before I started singing. But my dad was a choir director. My mom sang, and so did my sister. So I'm out in the lobby area waiting for choir rehearsal to be done so I can go home. And I'm usually there doing my homework, sitting there with my music in. You know, this is the days of Walkmans that are like a foot long, you know, with an actual cassette in it, big old headphones on. And he would come by and he would stop and talk to me a lot of times. And he would put the headphones on and listen to what I'm listening and give me this, oh, it's terrible, it's terrible. He didn't actually care. But then we started talking. And I remember one day, he asked me what was going on. And I had just gotten accepted to this trip to go to Washington, D.C. as an 8th grader. And I mentioned it to him. And it was part of, you had to have good grades and all this stuff to get to go. And I remember him saying, he's like, you know, I love all the stuff athletically and musically you kids do, but I'm always so proud when I hear about academics from you guys. And he was just so excited and proud when good things academically happened. And I didn't think about it much in the moment, but now as I look back, that was really cool just to hear somebody that I value, that I looked up to, say they were pleased or they were proud. And I think that's kind of one way that I see the reward Jesus is talking about from God playing out. Now, there's a couple different ideas about this whole thing. Some will talk about it is a future reward, saying it's some sort of reward we'll receive when the kingdom of God fully comes and we're with God in heaven. Maybe that might be part of it. Now, we definitely want to be careful with that one because we don't get to God or get to the kingdom of God by doing good things, all right? It's not an action that gets us there. All right, we believe it's only by grace through faith, but maybe there is something, all right, extra as a reward there. But I think it's even more in the present. The joy that I get from serving God, from having God pleased with me. Now, maybe that doesn't sound like a reward, but I really think it is. It's the God that has saved me for eternity, the God that loves me unconditionally, that gives me unmerited, undeserved grace, takes joy in me when I serve him. He's pleased with me. He actually likes me when I'm serving, right? That is something I believe we can take joy in. I think that's part of the reward here, is knowing that God is pleased with us when we give to those in need. So I would encourage us to look at that as a reward. So this week, kind of as we wrap it up, what do we do? What should we think about? First off is look for those opportunities to give. Actually give to those in need in whatever way is needed. Now, I would encourage this. I've thought about this a lot. I think one way to help take the focus off ourselves and put it onto those in need is finding out what is actually needed by them, right? Not just deciding what we think we would need, but finding out what they actually need. That right away makes it outward focused on them. All right, so finding out what those needs are. And then really check your heart in all this. And I've said, check your heart, spend time with God a lot. Well, it's stuff we have to do. And think about it. Are you looking for a response when you give? Are you looking for something in return when you give? Are you treating it more like a sale? I have something for you. You're going to give me something. Right? And this takes some honest reflection, because here's the thing. Your motive or your heart when you give, only you and God know. I can't tell you what it is. Julie can't tell you what it is. None of us can tell you what it is. That's between you and God. So honestly, reflect on it and spend time with God about that. And then when you give to the needy, treat it like God is the only one watching. And remember, he is pleased when we give. All right, when we give from a pure heart, when we give with the motivation that we really want to love and serve those in need, God is pleased with us. Let's pray. God, we thank you for this first week in motivation that we're talking about, God, that Jesus gives us these words about giving to the needy. First off, that the reminder that we do need to give to those in need, that you don't desire there be any poor people among us. God, that you want us and call us to help those in need. And then, God, I pray that we would all really be honest with ourselves and make sure that when we give, it is really about those in need, that we wouldn't do it for the praise and recognition of others, God, but that we know that you're watching us, that you see it, God, and it's what you desire us to do, and that it really does serve those in need. So I pray that we would remember that this week, God, and that we would all come to you with and just asking about opportunities to give and where we can give, but then also having you help us check our hearts and have those pure hearts for when we give, God. We pray this in your name. Amen.